I thought I knew my mother, until I found out she's been hiding my true identity. Now, I have to face the fact that I might be a weapon the enemy uses to destroy Tristan. 49. Tristan. I shot up quickly, getting ready to jump into action. But as soon as my eyes adjusted to the light, I realized there was no threat. It was just Courtney. The blonde girl furrowed her brows at me. Okay. Chill. She spoke, holding her hands up. I just came to tell you that my mom wants to know if you're going to be having lunch with us. I felt my body begin to relax, and it's only then that I realized how tense I was. Or rather, how tense I had been. I couldn't sleep in my house for a month after my father was murdered. And now I couldn't even feel at peace in my own pack. Once again, Ornyx had stolen that from me. He had stolen it from my entire pack. I looked at my watch and sighed. Tell her thanks, but I should be going. I have a meeting I have to get to. I spoke as I got up and picked up my jacket from the back of my chair. I turned around to look at Bridget, who looked peaceful in her bed. You would even believe she was sleeping if it wasn't for the machine she was attached to keeping her alive. Courtney leaned against the doorframe and looked at her older sister. You know, if you keep coming here every day, you're going to give my mum the wrong idea. She already believes you and Bridge are soulmates. There was humor in Courtney's voice as she made quotation marks in the air when she said soulmates, but we both knew Bridget's mother had been trying to set us up since we hit puberty. I used to find it funny until I realized that Bridget actually had feelings for me. Then it just became uncomfortable. Bridget's mother had always put pressure on her to marry well and provide for the family. Bridget was never the type who believed she needed a man in her life to make her happy, so she worked hard and got a good job instead. You'd think her mother would be happy having her daughter be the second most powerful person in this pack, but she still constantly bothered her about not getting a husband. Why aren't you in school anyway? I asked Courtney, changing the topic. Courtney rolled her eyes. I got suspended, remember? I had almost forgotten. The school had actually called my office to inform me of Courtney's suspension, seeing as to how she would have to be suspended from my apprenticeship program as well. You really shouldn't be starting fights at school, you know? I told her, knowing Bridget would have lost her head if she heard Courtney had been suspended for fighting. So I've been told. Courtney muttered irritably. You know, there are bigger things to worry about than me starting a stupid fight at school. The Van Cliffs are back. I need to be training for war. I looked at Courtney. Never say that. There is no war. I told her sternly. I worked too hard. We all did. We sacrificed so much so that no one else in Woodfell would ever have to experience war again. Tristan. Courtney spoke in a small voice. Ornyx Van Cliff is back. I walked towards Courtney and placed a hand on her shoulder. That's my problem, okay? Not yours or anyone else's. Courtney looked away from me stubbornly. Something Bridget used to do when we were younger. My sister is dying right in front of me, and you're telling me there's nothing I can do about it. She spoke bitterly. I'm telling you to trust me. I'll take care of everything. I told her. I didn't know how I could look Bridget's little sister in the eye and promise I would take care of everything after I had already failed to protect Bridget. My own beta. My oldest and closest friend. But that's what I had to do. That's what I had to say. I was the alpha and it was my job. Alpha Tristan. May showed up at the door holding my phone. 5 more minutes. I told her gruffly, knowing this hour I took from my schedule each day to see Bridget did more harm than good to my other priorities. Tell whoever it is that I'm preoccupied. May looked hesitant. Finally, she just blurted it out. It's Ornyx. He just sent a message. I froze. What? Crystal. Sue. Ornyx Van Cliff, one of the deadliest alphas in the history of werewolves, is your grandpappy. Christopher asked, slowly looking at me, then Kat, then me again. Do not call that monster grandpappy. It almost humanizes him. Kat spoke with a roll of her eyes as she continued rummaging Chris' closet for God knows what. Sorry, but this is the most insane thing I've heard. So that makes you? Chris pointed at me. His granddaughter. I asked, trying the words out, seeing if they fit. A man who had caused havoc and distraction was my grandfather. Nice. Chris ran a hand down his face. And Roman, he's been working for the Van Cliffs. All this time. Keep up, Christopher. Kat yelled impatiently as she fished more clothing out of his closet. And your mom? Christopher frowned at me. I gripped the necklace that still hung around my neck, wondering why I was still wearing it. Maybe I was scared to take it off. That would make everything too real. Yep. I sighed. Chris leaned back looking exhausted as if all this information was too overwhelming for him. So imagine how I felt when all that had been poured on me. Damn, there was. He spoke. I just looked at the floor not knowing what to say or do anymore. I had grown up on lies. My mum didn't tell me about my werewolf heritage, she didn't tell me about who my real father was. Hell, she probably didn't tell my dad who my real father was. He had lived his life believing that I was his. That we were some stupid big happy family. Wow. Chris let out, his eyes still wide. So what now? That was a good question. I don't know. I muttered. What did you do after finding out something like this that greatly affected your identity? I just know I need to see my dad. I told him. Chris hesitated. Which one? Obviously not the evil one. Kat spoke in a duh tone as she finally re-emerged, throwing on Chris' red hoodie. What? She shrugged at him before joining us where we sat on the floor of his room. I was cold. Looks good on you, was all Chris said, and I couldn't help but notice the shy smile on his face. Red always looks good on me, was Kat's response. She turned to face me. I can't believe my dad kept this from you. There was disgust in her words. I sighed. He was just trying to protect me. I had spent a long time in bed last night just trying to figure out who to be mad at about this entire ordeal. But was being mad at my uncle or Tristan really justified? A part of me believed it was. They knew my dad had been looking for me, and they both knew how much I had wanted to find him, yet they kept us away from each other. And when they found out that 𝐊𝐤𝐳 𝐸 is my real father, they kept that from me too. They didn't trust me enough with the truth. I could defend them all I wanted because I knew what they would both do to protect me, but it didn't stop me from feeling hurt. And look how well that turned out. Kat muttered. I didn't know what she meant. I was safe. I was still alive. Innocent people weren't. Chris let out a sigh. I still can't believe that, Roman. I just thought maybe he would turn out not to be a spy. That this would be some huge misunderstanding. Well, sorry to break it to you, but you're a fool if you believe that. Kat spoke. For some reason I still couldn't sit down and listen to anyone speak ill of Roman like that. I knew how Chris felt because I felt the exact same way. I wanted all to be a huge misunderstanding with Roman. I wanted everyone to be wrong about him. I wanted everyone to see the Roman I knew. I wanted the Roman I knew back. He seemed different. I spoke in a small voice. Different how? Chris asked in concern. I thought back to the night I had seen Roman. He was still him, but I don't know. Angrier. I almost shivered when I thought about how he had spoken about how Tristan deserved to suffer. That was Roman. The real Roman. Does that mean I never really knew my mother either? Of course not. The woman I knew, or thought I knew, would never have left me or lied to me about my father. Roman was always angry before. Kat muttered in a low voice. He was always grumpy. Moody even. Not angry. Chris spoke defensively. No. He was angry. He hated Woodfell. If anything, we should have seen it coming. Kat muttered. Chris looked like he was about to say something, but I interrupted him. I thought he loved me. I spoke. I felt tears prick at my eyes. Or at least cared enough. I looked Roman in the eyes that night. I hoped he would get into that car with me. Leave with me, have what we had always wanted. But I knew that whatever cause the Van Cliffs had was what he had chosen. We might never know why Roman did what he did, but at least now we know the truth. Kat spoke, placing her hand on my knee. Now all I want to know is what's going to happen to me. I spoke. Kat and Chris looked at me in confusion. What's that supposed to mean? Kat asked. I'm part of the Van Cliff family. When people here find out, they're going to want my head on a spike. Tristan won't let that happen. Kat spoke immediately. I haven't had a proper conversation with Tristan since the incident. I spoke. He just told me to stay put while they come up with a plan. Even yesterday he had given me comfort, but that's it. I don't know if I was mistaken, but I had seen it in his eyes. He wanted to hold me for longer. But he didn't. He let go and just told me I could call him if I needed anything. He let go. That's what hurt the most. He let go. It's not like the plan involved him holding on, but I don't know. I wanted him to. That probably made me selfish, but I wanted someone to hold on to me. Someone to still want me. Still, you're his mate. Kat continued. I muttered. Kat and Chris shared a look. Either way, Alpha Tristan is a good guy. He'll keep all of us safe. Chris spoke. Ornyx killed his parents, right? I asked. Kat swallowed. Not directly, but yeah. Ornyx hurt lots of people in this pack, right? I continued. Kat just nodded. I can't stay, guys. I need to leave Woodfell. I told them firmly. Chrissy, you're our family and this is your home. Kat told me. No. It isn't. It never was. Kat didn't say anything and I knew it was because she knew I was right. But, where are you going to go? Chris asked. I don't know. I admitted. To be with my father, hopefully. But I just can't be here anymore. I was surprised to see Kat suddenly wipe a tear from her eyes. Ah, Kat. I spoke, moving in to wrap an arm around her. This isn't fair. She spoke. You're my best friend and you're a freaking good person. None of this should be happening to you. I just held Kat and wondered if I was a good person. I tried to be, but I was just as flawed as everyone else. Chris had been silent, but I saw him getting emotional as well. I didn't want to say goodbye to either of them. They were some of the best parts of Woodfell. I only pulled away from Kat when I heard my phone begin to ring. I'm not a wimp or anything, so if either of you mentioned I cried today, you're dead. Kat warned us. I smiled weakly before picking up my phone. It was an unknown number, so I just assumed it was someone from Tristan's office calling to give me feedback. But the minute I heard the voice, I knew who it was immediately. Hey, the voice greeted. Roman. Kat and Chris immediately perked up, looking at me in concern. Crystal, give me the phone. Kat demanded. I turned around, ignoring her. What do you want? I spat, creating distance from Kat and Chris. Crystal, hang up now or so God help me, Kat spoke. 𝐿𝐸. Okay, I see you're still mad. Roman spoke with a sigh. I almost laughed. You're kidding me, right? Crystal. I'm calling the guards. Kat spoke in a threatening tone. I didn't say anything to her. I didn't know what to. I wanted to be mad at Roman. How dare he call me so casually after what happened? But another part of me was washed in relief. Is that Kat? He asked, sounding amused. Roman, we're getting the guards now. I told him, trying not to let my mind take me to a Roman who didn't exist anymore. Go ahead. He spoke breezily. He wasn't worried in the least, and I understood why. It would be easy to scream and have the guards who had escorted us to Chris' house rush in. But then again, what good would it do? It was just a phone call. Why are you calling? I asked, ignoring the murderous and panicked looks Kat and Chris were giving me respectively. Just looking out for you as usual. Roman spoke, his tone gentle. Almost like my old Roman. Crystal, I'm calling Dad. Kat spoke, taking out her phone. But by the hesitant look on her face, I knew that she knew just as well as I did that that wouldn't do anything. I raised a hand to stop her and took the phone away from my ear, putting it on speakerphone so that Kat and Chris could hear. What are you talking about, Roman? I asked. He was silent for a while and I couldn't help but look around Chris' room, wondering if he could see us right now. Remember the first time we almost had sex? I immediately felt my face get warm and regretted putting my phone on speaker. Kat's eyes widened and her jaw dropped at me. Chris looked at the phone, then at me, then at the phone again. I really regretted putting my phone on speakerphone. Why are you bringing that up? I asked, my voice cracking slightly. Roman chuckled lightly, and I could just imagine him giving me one of those amused looks he would give me when I felt abashed. As if it gave him an edge and made him more superior. As if my innocence made me cute. Of course I remembered that day. I remembered everything that happened with him, big and small. I had initiated things that day in his apartment. I had bought the condoms and made sure we were alone. I had wanted to have sex with him because I thought that would make us feel closer. Because I thought that would close the gap of the distance I had been feeling with him lately. That if I gave him my body, he would never let me go. Remember what I told you that day? Roman continued, his voice as gentle as it had been that same afternoon in his room. I didn't answer immediately. Partly because I was embarrassed at even having to talk about this in front of my friends, but also because it felt like a trick. Why would he bring up our most intimate moments? You told me that you didn't want to rush things. That all good things are worth waiting for. I spoke in a small voice. For a second I wasn't in Chris' room. I was in Roman's just a few months ago. Looking into his hazel eyes and falling even more deeply in love. Exactly. I could practically hear the smile in his voice. I've waited so long to see you again. And it might not have gone the way I planned the first time, but I know we'll be together again, baby. That's what I had wanted in the first place. He didn't even know how badly I had wanted that. But after everything that had happened, I just couldn't want that anymore. I'm glad we didn't sleep together that night. I spoke, trying to remove all the emotion from my voice, trying to make the words hurt. What? Roman asked in shock, obviously not expecting those words. Then I would have had to deal with the fact that I had been intimate with someone who lied to me. Someone I thought I knew, a monster. I didn't even mean to add the last part. All I knew is that I wanted him to hurt like I had been hurting. I'm not a monster, Crystal. You're living with the monsters and you can't even freaking see that I'm just trying to help you. He yelled angrily. I flinched back, not expecting that tone from him. But then again, why was I surprised? The Roman I had known wasn't real and I needed to accept that. I freaking love you, Crystal. Me. Not Tristan. Me. He will never. There was suddenly a shuffling sound and then I heard a voice that I hadn't heard in 4 years. That's enough, David. I froze as I heard more shuffling. Then the voice was directed at me and sent a chill down my spine. Hello, baby. I gulped. Mum. 𝐿𝐲 Mum. Hi, baby. I would recognize that voice anywhere. It was a voice that once brought me comfort, that once soothed me when I was in distress. A voice I associated with capability, love, reliance. But now the voice just honestly frightened me. I didn't know what to do or say for a minute. Kat and Chris looked equally as stunned. Finally, I just cleared my throat and tried to make my voice sound as firm as possible. Mum, why are you calling? I asked. Oh, that's no way to talk to your mother, sweetie. She spoke in a stern voice. The same one she would use when she was scolding me when I was younger. Before, I would have been afraid. But now I was just angry. My mother isn't some woman who would lie to me about everything in my life. I didn't think I would get emotional. I was angry, yes, but I was also incredibly hurt. I heard a sigh. I don't know what you've heard, Crystal, but you shouldn't believe anything the 𝐿𝐲𝐼𝐻 tell you. I can explain everything. I almost scoffed. That's all everyone had been doing. And I was so sick and tired of it. I don't want your explanations. Bye. Wait, sweetie. She spoke, stopping me from cutting the call. You might not want to hear anything that David or I have to say, but we're just calling to warn you. Warn me about what? I asked skeptically, knowing this could just be a ruse to get me to stay on the call. Oh, sweetie, life's about to get a little more complicated for you. At that moment, the door burst open and I saw Tristan storm in with Peter, May and 2 guards behind him. I saw Chris' mum come in as well and immediately go for her son. Who are you talking to? Tristan demanded, grabbing my phone from me. The minute he did, the call ended. Who was that? Tristan asked. I looked around, still trying to process how he could have known about the call. Roman and my mum. Tristan turned to look at Peter and May, who both looked concerned. Let's go. I'm taking you home, he told me, spinning around without another question. He stopped in front of Mrs. Rodriguez and Chris. Notify me immediately if Roman tries to make contact, he told Chris, who just nodded his head, looking fearful. If this was a different situation, Kat and I would have teased him endlessly for the way he remained in his mother's arms. I'll have security planted outside your door, ma'am, he told Mrs. Rodriguez with a nod. Thank you, Alpha, she responded with a curt bow. Come on. May waved Kat and I forward urgently. Kat and I looked at each other briefly before rushing after Tristan and his crew, who had already walked out of the room. Captain Park on the phone for you, Peter told Tristan, handing him a phone. Tristan grabbed it and placed it to his ear. I don't care, he growled. The sound caused me to jump a little. I want whoever leaked that video found and brought to me. I looked at Kat to see if she looked just as confused as I did. What video? She mouthed and I just shrugged. Don't call me until you have answers, Tristan barked. Alpha, the Southern Wall Defense is on the phone for you, May spoke, coming forward with another phone. We had gotten outside where I saw more guards, all dressed in the army uniform, and 3 more vehicles other than the one we had arrived in. Take care of it. Tristan waved her off. Murray and Dlamini, he called. 2 soldiers rushed forward. You're on the Rodriguez's watch. Watch their backs, he told them. Yes, Alpha, they responded. Tristan went to bark more orders at a couple of soldiers. Peter, what's going on? I asked in confusion. I had seen Tristan in alpha mode before, and something had definitely triggered it. Peter had a worried look on his face. He opened his mouth to say something, but at that moment, Tristan yelled his name and called him over. I need you at HQ. Gather the council. I'll be with you after I take care of Crystal and the Bensons, he told them. Now I was really confused. Take care of me and the Bensons? May, you're with me, he yelled, calling over May, who was talking to some soldiers in the distance. He turned to me and gestured towards one of the vehicles. Come on, he spoke. Kat and I didn't hesitate as he opened one of the doors for us. We both got in. Luna. The driver turned to greet me. I looked forward and was surprised to see Raphael. I just stared at him, not really knowing what to say. I was too aware of the fact that Raphael here didn't like me one bit. And in our last encounter, Tristan had even gotten involved, making it all the more worse. Thankfully, at the moment, May hopped into the passenger seat beside Raphael and Tristan got into the vehicle beside me. The public keeps calling in, May spoke, typing something away on the phone she held. At this rate, we'll have a mob outside the manor in the next 30 minutes. Raphael spoke. Where are my brothers? Tristan asked, ignoring Raphael. Safe. At the manor. May responded. Though Joshua wants to be at HQ helping. All the apprentices do, Alpha. This is way above what they're prepared for. They're just kids. They stay out of this. Tristan responded. For now, let's work on damage control. Damage control. Raphael scoffed. Ornyx just dropped a bomb on the whole town and you're thinking about damage control. With all due respect, Alpha, trying to bury this will make you look weak. And that's what he wants. I looked at Tristan. Ornyx. Tristan clenched his jaw, avoiding my gaze. I'm not trying to bury anything. I just want to do this the right way. Ornyx wants me to fight fire with fire. I'm not giving him that satisfaction. He responded. Okay, was he really just going to ignore me? He wants a reaction, Tristan. Raphael spoke. He still sees you as a boy. Show him you're not. Show him that he can't just mess with your pack and get away with it. What do you suggest I do? Play into his hands and start a war? Tristan growled angrily. Raphael remained silent. No, we lost thousands of werewolves last time. I'm not letting that happen again. May, have you sent the letter to the Union? Yes, Alpha. It's going through werewolf affairs right now. She responded. Good, Tristan. I screamed. The car grew silent. Kat looked at me in confusion, so did Raphael and May. Tristan furrowed his brows at me. At first, he didn't look too pleased at being interrupted, but then his face softened when he saw the agitated expression on mine. What the heck is going on? I asked in a calmer voice but with the same urgency. For a minute, Tristan didn't say anything. He just faced the front and clenched his fist. Show her. His words were directed at May. May speedily pressed some buttons on the phone she held before handing it over to me. I looked down at the screen. It was a video recording. A man sat at a desk smirking at the camera. Ornyx Van Cliff. Kat gasped. I looked back at the video, honestly shocked. I didn't know what I had been picturing when I thought of what Ornyx Van Cliff would have looked like. Definitely not your typical grandfather. And he definitely didn't look like one. He had short, tightly coiled black hair with many bushes of gray showing and a closely cut beard to add. Ornyx must have been in his mid or late 70s from what I knew about the town's history. But he could easily deceive anyone into thinking he was more than 10 years younger. But that was common among werewolves. They didn't age like humans. What is this? I asked, honestly afraid of the answer I would get. Press play. Was all Tristan said. I looked at Kat, who just looked at me expectantly. I took in a deep breath before complying. Greetings, Silvercrest Pack. He spoke. There was a smug look on the man's face that made him seem all the more dangerous. I know most of you will be surprised to see me, but believe me, your eyes aren't playing tricks on you. It is I, Ornyx Van Cliff, alive and well. A chill went down my spine when he said those words. I looked at Tristan to see his reaction, but he only clenched his fist tighter. Take this video message as proof that your alphas failed to beat me. 3 generations of Melrose alphas failed at this one simple task. His tone was almost mocking. I killed Jonathan Melrose. I killed Jean Melrose, and I'm going to kill your current child of an alpha. It felt like the tension in the car grew with just those words. I found myself looking at Tristan again, this time in more concern over him than I've ever felt before. The war didn't destroy me, it only wounded me. Forced me into what some might call hiding. But that's not how I see it. I wasn't hiding. I never was. I was recuperating, reassembling, plotting. You believed I was gone, but all I was doing was planning on a way to come back bigger and better. Stronger. I planted a spy in your territory and none of you were the least bit wiser. Your alpha let me slip through his cracks once again. He let out a laugh. Pathetic. If anything, consider what I'm doing a favor. People like Tristan Melrose and the Werewolf Union have made a mockery of werewolves for too long, forcing us to hide our true nature, making us appear weak. Werewolves were never meant to hide or be tame. We're predators, superior beings who are faster and stronger. All humans deserve to bow down to us. I'm here to make things right again. I'm here to take back what's rightfully mine. Starting with the territory the Werewolf Union stole from me. And of course, he paused and then grinned right at the camera. My darling granddaughter who Alpha Tristan has graciously been keeping safe for me. You may know her as Crystal Swan, but from now on you have the honor of knowing her real name, Valencia Van Cliff. For some reason it felt like he was talking right at me when he said those words. Oh my gosh. Kat whispered. I swallowed. Well, at least I now knew what my real name was. 𝐶𝐬𝐬. You can't keep sneaking around to see her. I heard my mother speak in hushed voices. I sat down on the carpet in front of the coffee table coloring. 8-year-old me was pretty much in my own world, not really paying attention to anything other than my drawing. Not the water that was running out of the faucet that my mother had left open in the kitchen. Not the ticking of the vintage clock that had belonged to my great-grandfather. And I was definitely not paying attention to my mother's pacing in the kitchen as she spoke on the phone. I wasn't paying attention, but my subconscious still picked up some of the words she whispered to whoever was on the other end. I'm serious. She's just a kid. She doesn't even know you. No. It's too soon. What if she gets scared? She might. She's going to tell her father. That's what she believes. The front door to our apartment swung open. I immediately perked up and beamed when I saw my father walk in with his briefcase in hand. Daddy! I cheered. Hey, sweetie. He set down his briefcase just in time for me to run up to him so that he could lift me and carry me. Did you get bigger? He asked in a teasing voice. I giggled. Daddy, you saw me this morning. That was 4 hours ago, darling. It's a really long time in daddy time. Hey honey, you're back early. I hadn't even heard my mother approach us. Her cell phone nowhere in sight. My lectures got canceled for the day. The school was having their sports thing. Remember? I told you about that. He responded as he set me down and walked over to place a kiss on my mother's cheek. Oh right. I must have forgotten. My mother responded. He looked at her. You okay? You look kind of pale. Oh, I'm fine. She responded quickly. Since you're back early, we could have an early lunch, just the 3 of us. Oh, that sounds great. We could go out to... My mother responded quickly. Let's just stay and we could order in. I don't really feel like getting dressed and leaving the house. She gave him a charming smile. We could watch one of your stupid Harry Potter movies. Harry Potter is not stupid. I yelped. Yes, Mum, Harry Potter is not stupid. My father spoke, placing his hand on his chest, feigning offense. My mother rolled her eyes. Yeah, whatever. I'm going to order lunch. Something organic for you and your daughter. She placed a kiss on my father's cheek. And pizza for me. Hey. Dad and I both yelled at the same time, albeit for different reasons. My father because he believed junk food shouldn't enter our bodies because they are temples. And me because I really wanted pizza as well. Just go set up while I order the food. My mother told us dismissively. Aye, Captain. My dad responded before picking me up and carrying me to the living room where my crayons were scattered all over. You're one busy lady. He whistled before picking up my drawing. I saw his face furrow in confusion as he studied it. Kiddo. What is this? I suddenly froze when I remembered the promise I made to my mother about not telling my father certain things. What I had been drawing had in fact been the wolf I kept seeing in my dreams. The big black one with the bright red eyes. What is it, Crystal? It looks kind of like a wolf. He spoke, turning the paper around. It is. 𝐿𝐲𝐬𝐬. He looked at me in concern. That's an interesting choice. Why did you choose to draw this, love? What are we talking about? My mother suddenly appeared from the kitchen, forcing a smile. My father set down the paper and smiled at me. Why don't you finish up here, hun? I nodded silently, giving my mother an apologetic look. I felt incredibly guilty for breaking our Van Cliff girls' pact. I didn't hear their entire conversations, but I heard things like, child therapist, weird, creepy, from my father, and my mother's voice rising as she said things like my daughter. Nothing wrong. Perfectly normal. Needless to say, we didn't watch that movie that night. I'm here to take back what's rightfully mine. Starting with the territory the werewolf union stole from me. And of course, my darling granddaughter who Alpha Tristan has graciously been keeping safe for me. You may know her as Crystal Swan, but from now on you have the honor of knowing her real name, Valencia Van Cliff. Uncle Victor looked away from the phone that the video was playing from. He furrowed his brows and I could tell how disturbed he looked. He really is back. Uncle Victor spoke. And more demented than ever. Peter commented from where he stood in the Benson kitchen. I'm sure you understand why I need to move you out of this house as soon as possible. Tristan told them. Aunt Sarah looked at Uncle Victor with a frown. They've already infiltrated the house once. May reminded them. I shuddered at the memory. Where are we going to go? Uncle Victor asked. The manor. Tristan responded easily. You'll be safe there. But we'll be putting you and your family in danger. I spoke up. Tristan looked up at me. No one will get through. He assured me. I wanted to remind him that his own father had been murdered in the manor. It was clear that Ornyx was looking for me. And from the last failed mission, it showed that they wanted Aunt Sarah and Uncle Victor as well as the other Bensons as well. We would only be putting Tristan and his brothers in more danger. Not to mention everyone else who lived with him. An image of the bloody corpses of his soldiers flashed through my mind. What about Crystal? Uncle Victor asked. The whole town knows that she's Ornyx's granddaughter now. They won't take lightly to the news. I looked at Tristan, Peter and May. They obviously knew that it was true. Let me handle my people. Tristan spoke as he stood up. Uncle Victor stood up as well, looking at Tristan seriously. I know you think that you have everything under control, Alpha, but Ornyx isn't a fool. He knows his game. Take it from me. Trust me, I know. Tristan replied. No, you don't. Uncle Victor insisted. He sighed. We're trained to be soldiers in the Shadow Pack. From childhood, we're brainwashed to be committed to our Alpha, to die for him if need be. That's why I'm not surprised that Roman was able to become a spy so young. All Shadow Pack members have blind allegiance to the Van Cliff family. The Silvercrest Pack has allegiance to the Melrose family too, Raphael spoke. He was standing in the back of the room and he had been quiet so far. Not like the Shadow Pack. Trust me. Uncle Victor spoke. Ornyx could tell a pack member to cut off his tongue, and he would do it without question. If there had been a mole in the Shadow Pack, he would have had his or her head on a spike right now. Tristan was silent for a while. He clenched his fist. What do you suggest? He asked slowly. Uncle Victor looked back at Tristan. Listen, son, I'm not here to teach you how to run your pack. But if you're going to go head-on against Ornyx, you're going to need some inside information. My suggestion. Use the rogues you captured in Roman's X. Wait. Hold on a minute. What? I asked. They were all quiet and it was evident that there was something I didn't know. Roman's X. I asked, knowing that there was no way Uncle Victor was referring to me. I thought we were all past the secret keeping. I told them. Tristan was the one to speak. Her name is Maggie Carter. We told you about her and you met her. Well, kind of. My mind took me back to that dreadful night. Maggie. She's the wolf who had fought Roman that night. The spy turned enemy of the Van Cliffs. I hadn't known what to make of her at the time, and honestly, she hadn't really been my concern either. All I had known is that she had provided the necessary distraction for me to escape. And according to Tristan, she had given them some information on the Van Cliffs. She's Roman's ex. I asked in shock. How? Kat asked in confusion. The same question played through my mind. I had been Roman's first real girlfriend. She's from the Shadow Pack, and she's a part of the rogues that infiltrated the pack. That's as far as we have established. Peter explained. I knew this already though. But she's still in lockup. I asked. Yes. Tristan responded. So she's an enemy of the Van Cliffs. I spoke, looking around the room. Doesn't that make them friends? They claim to be deserters of the Shadow Pack, but I wouldn't exactly call them friends. Tristan spoke. This girl, she fought Roman. I saw it. I spoke. That doesn't mean a thing. We still don't know what her agenda is. Tristan argued. Well, right now her and the other rogues are your only connection to Ornyx and the Van Cliffs. Don't you think you should enlist their help? I asked. I'm an alpha. I'm not going to ask for help from my prisoners. Tristan scoffed at the very suggestion. I folded my arms across my chest and fixed him with a serious look. You saw the video, Tristan. Ornyx has promised to kill you. Swallow your pride. I snapped. The room was silent again. Tristan stared at me quietly. Could I have a minute alone with Crystal, please? He ordered in a low voice. His apprentices and Raphael immediately complied, turning to walk out the kitchen. Kat followed as well. I saw Aunt Sarah tugging on Uncle Victor's arm. He's the only one who seemed reluctant to follow the Alpha's order. I nodded at him, telling him it was okay. He reluctantly got up and left with Aunt Sarah. The minute everyone was gone, I turned on Tristan. Why are you being so stubborn? I snapped. Tristan stood up and walked around the island towards me. I'm not being stubborn, I'm being alpha. And alphas are not weak. They don't act impulsively out of fear. Well, I think you should be afraid. I countered. Ornyx is alive and he is coming for you. You underestimate me. Tristan spoke. No. I told him breathlessly. I just don't want you to die. My voice cracked when I said the last part. Tristan's face softened. He sucked in a deep breath. I know people look down on me for being a boy alpha. But what everyone needs to understand is that I've been training for this my entire life. I can take Ornyx. He spoke the last part with a desperate determination. Like he wasn't just trying to convince me but himself as well. What if you can't? I spoke in a small voice. Then you die and the pack loses their alpha, Michael and Joshua lose their brother. Tristan clenched his jaw. I'm not going to fail. He spoke. I sighed. I know you want everyone to see you and respect you like they did your mother. And I know you want to defeat Ornyx, but Tristan, you're not being smart about this. Tristan looked amused. How would you know that I'm not being smart when you don't even know what my plan is? 'Cause I know you. I told him. He was right, I didn't know what his plan was, but I could see where this was going judging by his behavior. So far Ornyx has had the upper hand. He has been playing mind tricks on you, sending Roman in to infiltrate the pack. Even if he couldn't plan for us to become mates, he was obviously behind having my mother bring me here. You are so desperate to prove something to your pack and to Ornyx that you're letting him provoke you into getting into a fight that you won't win. Not like this anyway. Tristan let out a humorless laugh. Oh, you want to talk about people being desperate to prove something? He took a step closer to me and nodded down at me. Why do you still have that necklace on, Crystal? My hand unconsciously flew up to finger the chain. Even after finding out the necklace was poisoning me, I still hadn't taken it off. I'll tell you why, because you're scared. Scared of having everyone finally see the real you. The one that's more powerful than anyone could have thought. He spoke. I scoffed. Please. No, don't deny it. We shared an empathy link, remember? I learned that you feel most afraid in situations where have the chance to show the world your potential. You avoid the spotlight at all costs because that's what your mother programmed you to do. I felt mad at Tristan for assuming things. You didn't know anything about my mom, Tristan, and just because we were mates for a hot minute, it doesn't mean you know me like that. Tristan's face grew serious. We were mates for barely a month, but as far as caring about you, being aware of you, I've done that since I found you. That's the difference between us. I never rejected the mating bond. Yes, you did. I spoke my mind going back to the night of the ball. It still stung to think about it. That's because I had to. He spoke, his voice suddenly lower. I wasn't going to make you be with me any longer. It wasn't fair to either of us. Besides, you already made your choice and I respected it. Saying I didn't want you to kill Roman wasn't be choosing him. I spoke defensively. What about now? After what he did to you and your family, would you let me kill him? Tristan asked. I hesitated, and that seemed enough for Tristan. I thought so. He spat at me. He turned away, but I marched after him. I grabbed his shoulder. He spun on me, catching me off guard for a second. Me not wanting you to kill someone has nothing to do with love. If anything, it's based on morality. And according to morality, Roman doesn't deserve to pay for killing my soldiers. For hurting Bridget? Tristan asked. I saw the anger in his eyes. You kill him and you become like him. I spoke softly. You were right. I didn't recognize that Roman. There were bits and pieces of him, but I saw something else in him that night. Something dark and scary. It frightened me. And I'm afraid that if you play into Ornyx's hands, you're going to come back in bits and pieces too. And there are so many people who still need the kind and compassionate Tristan. You're a good man. Don't let Ornyx turn you into one of his monsters. Tristan had calmed down now, but I still saw his chest heaving slightly. He looked down into my eyes. My mother used to tell me that above all, I should treasure peace and harmony in my pack. My people have had that since the war ended. I need to make sure it stays that way, whatever it takes. What are you going to do then? What's your plan? I asked. I saw Tristan hesitate and I wondered if he was trying to decide if he could trust me or not. Ornyx is a man of tradition. He's trigger-happy, but he respects the laws of old. I'm going to challenge him. One-on-one combat. My eyes widened. My werewolf history was a lot rusty, but I knew what duels between alphas meant. He takes over the pack when you die, I told him. Tristan rolled his eyes. There you go again with underestimating me. I'm not going to lose or die. Tristan, he's more experienced. I yelled. How was he not seeing how stupid he was? And I'm not weak. He responded. I clenched my fists. Tristan, don't do this. There has to be another way. This is the only way that prevents unnecessary bloodshed. He replied. You can't do this. I spoke again. Think of the pack, of your brothers. They lose you if you die. Then I guess I just won't die. Tristan responded in an exhausted tone. He was tired of this conversation, but I wasn't. Bridget would agree with me if she were here, and you know it. I saw Tristan tense up and I immediately regretted bringing his beta up. Yeah, I bet she would. He spoke quietly. But she can't say anything to this because of what they did to her. I'm going to make sure Ornyx pays with his life. He turned to leave and I was getting desperate. I wanted to cry. Every step he took getting closer to the door felt alarmingly loud. Like if he walked out and left, I wouldn't see him ever again. Tristan, wait. He stopped in his tracks and turned around. Don't do this. I begged. He let out a sigh. I know what I'm doing, Crystal. I know you don't believe me, but I do. It's not that I don't believe you. I whispered. I just don't want to lose you. For a moment he just stared at me. I decided a long time ago that I wasn't going to let fear dictate my life. You shouldn't either. You can start by getting rid of that necklace. With that he left, walking out and leaving me hopeless. 𝐊𝐲, it was just a little noise. But it was enough to send me shooting out of bed. I turned to my side and saw Kat fast asleep next to me. She hadn't even flinched and I wondered how that was possible. Falling asleep back home after the incident had been just as difficult. The smallest thing from Kat snoring to Parker dropping a Lego woke me up. But it had gotten easier as time passed by. But now we were in a new house. A house that I hadn't come to know like the back of my hand. I heard the shuffling again and my heart started to beat faster. I thought about the panic buttons all over the house strategically placed. I thought about the dozens of cameras and I thought about the trained soldiers standing outside. The point of a safe house was that it was supposed to be safe. So why did I still feel on edge? Why did I think someone could still have broken in with the soldiers that were guarding us standing just outside? Oh, that's right, because it hadn't stopped Roman last time. I carefully got out of bed even though I knew Kat wouldn't budge. There were 5 bedrooms in this place and we could have each gotten our own. And you would think Kat would have rushed to pick the biggest and claim it. She never felt shy to tell me how much she had enjoyed having her own room before I came about. I knew it wasn't coming from a bad place. She had just enjoyed having her own space. But when we got here, she moved into the room I chose and now we were back to sharing a bed. I guess she still believed I needed comfort after all that had happened. And honestly, I agreed. I slipped on my slippers and slowly headed out of the room. The shuffling was still there all right. Maybe I should have just moved aside the painting on the wall and pressed the panic button there, but I didn't. I really don't know why I didn't. After spending so much time contemplating what I should have done differently with Roman to prevent so much disaster, you would think I would be smarter. But no. I was going headfirst into danger. All I could think about was the Bensons safely tucked away in their beds slumbering. If someone was here, I needed to make sure that they would take me. Not them. I established that the sound was coming from the kitchen. I walked thorough down the stairs and went down the hallway. Now I was sure that someone was moving in there. I leaned over the doorframe and peeked in. I sighed in relief when I saw Aunt Sarah's blonde locks. Hey, I greeted. She spun around from where she had been rummaging through a cupboard. Oh, Crystal. Baby, I didn't hear you come down. She spoke. Sorry for scaring you. I apologized as I slid into a stool at the island table. Couldn't sleep either. Aunt Sarah ran her hand through her hair. She walked around the island and slid into a stool beside me. No, she admitted with a sigh. I guess I'm just too used to our house. I looked at the cupboard she had open and smiled to myself. So you came down here to organize. I saw her cheeks tint pink. Well, I had to do something or I was going to go crazy just sitting up in that room awake all night. She spoke sounding a little defensive. I laughed and she smiled at me. How are you holding up, kiddo? It was a question I had been receiving on the daily from her. And I knew she didn't want the typical answer. I feel like everything is just floating. And I just can't grasp any of it. I told her. Everything that was happening just felt so out of my control. I couldn't talk sense into Roman like I had wanted. Ornyx was another untouchable story, and now Tristan wanted to run into fire and there was nothing I could say to stop him. Does this have something to do with that argument you had with Tristan? She asked gently. Of course they had all heard. Werewolf hearing. Ornyx will kill him. I told Aunt Sarah. I hadn't even met Ornyx, but I saw his soldiers, I saw Roman, and I saw that Vanessa girl, and I saw how they didn't hesitate. How lightning fast their actions were. How lethal. If they were that dangerous. What more, they're alpha. You don't know that. Aunt Sarah spoke as she reached out to place her hand on mine. Yes, I do. Ornyx is a cold-blooded killer, and Tristan. He's kind and he's honorable and noble. That's not a fair fight. The person playing dirty always wins. I told her. I think you're forgetting something very important, sweetie. I looked up at her in confusion and she took my hand in both of hers. At the end of the day, Ornyx and Tristan will fight for power. But there is something way bigger than both Ornyx and Tristan. Someone actually. I sighed when I realized what she was talking about. God. You know, in the Holy Scriptures it says, fret not thyself because of evil men. Neither be thou envious at the wicked, for there shall be no reward to the evil man, the candle of the wicked shall be put out. She recited. I know you're worried that Tristan will get hurt, but at the end of the day, truth, justice, love, all these things lie in a light that can never be put out. The light shines in the darkness and the darkness cannot fathom. I spoke. Aunt Sarah smiled proudly. She patted my hand. Everything will be okay. You just have to have a little faith. I didn't know what to say. Sitting back and doing nothing was difficult. I wanted to help. To do something to save Tristan myself. I fingered my necklace and I saw Aunt Sarah's eyes dart to it. Crystal, I've been meaning to talk to you about that necklace. She spoke. I dropped my hand and looked up at her, thinking back to the argument with Tristan. I know you think I should take it off. Aunt Sarah frowned. Why haven't you? I thought about the first time I had put it on. What it symbolized. I can't seem to bring myself to do it. I admitted to her. I feel like once I finally have it off, the connection I have with my mother will be severed. Baby, I did not meet your mother and I can't speak to what kind of woman she was, but I've heard so much from your father. She seems like she is a very protective woman. I nodded. That's exactly who she is or was. She was always there for me and my dad. Aunt Sarah smiled slightly. You really miss them, don't you? I felt my eyes get watery. I do. And I just think about how things will never be the same with us. I'm truly sorry about that, baby. But I'm not sorry that your mother brought you here to be with us. Your uncle always believed she decided to bring you here for a reason. Maybe it's not what we thought, but you are a blessing to this family. And we all love you dearly. I smiled at her. And I love you all too. I just hate the problems that I brought upon everyone. Oh hush. Every family has problems, Crystal. You just have to figure out how to deal with them. Together. I sighed and looked out the window. The moon was partially hidden behind some clouds. Hazel's gonna miss the changing ceremony. Tomorrow there would be a full moon. Full moons were a time of celebration for werewolves. Most of our ceremonies were celebrated on the nights of full moons. Hazel looked like she was on the brink of completing the ceremony. All she needed was tomorrow night to trigger it. Then we'll do it here. The four of us. Aunt Sarah spoke. And I knew that she meant Kat, Hazel, herself and I. I hadn't attended the Silver Crest changing ceremony during my first change. Felt awkward. I wasn't one of them, and that was evident. Besides, I had seen Uncle Victor's wolf, and I knew that mine wouldn't be the same brown coat as the other Silvercrest wolves. I would stick out like a sore thumb. That's why I had gone through it with Aunt Sarah to guide me in the privacy of our own backyard. And the night had been magnificent. I had never in my life felt so free. Do you think I changed so late because of this? I asked, gesturing to my necklace. Aunt Sarah frowned. I don't know much about 𝐊𝐬𝐬, but my mother used to work with herbs. I do think it can delay your changes as well. She spoke softly. I thought back to my fainting spells in high school. I always wondered why Kat described her changing in a way that was so different to hers. She had always talked of the process as effortlessly. I had to push to get my wolf out. I always thought it was because I was half human. I don't know what's going to happen, dear. Tomorrow is a mystery to me. But I do know that I have hope. And I trust that God will take care of everything. We need just to be still. Now come on, we should get some rest. I looked out at the hidden moon. Be still. Have trust. God, I don't want to lose Tristan. Please, please help me. Crystal, look. Look. I'm the king of the world. I smiled at the sight of Parker as he ran up the hill. I am definitely not looking forward to his changing ceremony. Aunt Sarah spoke, sighing as she came up behind me. Hurry up, slowpokes. Parker held up his hands as if he was flying as he ran in circles. None of us are. I muttered. I turned around and could see our safe house in the distance. It was pretty far off from town, so the area was secluded enough. Aunt Sarah and I were just scouting it out in order to ensure that we would have a nice private area for Hazel's shift tonight. It was so quiet and peaceful out here that you would even be convinced that the rest of the world didn't exist. That no one was trying to kill anyone and that there was no threat of war. Mummy! Mummy! Look! Cars! Parker screamed. I looked down the mountain and surely, in the distance, I could see familiar black vehicles approaching. The safe hose was deep enough in the thick of the woods that vehicles couldn't get through if they tried. So they had to park out in the distance and navigate on foot. It was secluded and hidden. Probably Tristan. Aunt Sarah spoke when she saw the look on my face. I nodded even though I was still on edge. I thought about how Roman and his friends had acquired Silvercrest pack uniforms. What would stop them from acquiring their vehicles? I tried to put my mind at ease by telling myself that there were highly trained soldiers all around the house. We headed down the hill, going back to the house, Parker treating it as a race, of course. When we were close, I urged myself to relax when I heard Tristan's voice. But it wasn't the only one. I heard a light feminine laugh that I knew definitely didn't belong to Tristan. I looked at Aunt Sarah in confusion and she seemed just as clueless. When we got to the front, I immediately spotted two unfamiliar faces in a uniform that definitely didn't belong to the Silvercrest pack talking to Rick. I immediately felt my guard go up. Uncle Rick. Parker ran towards the guard. I almost reached out to grab him and pull him back, but Aunt Sarah placed a hand on my shoulder before I could. It's okay, that's the 𝐾𝐤 pack uniform. She spoke as way of explanation. I focused on the badges on their uniforms and realized that it was the 𝐾𝐤 pack symbol. Crystal, Mrs. Benson. May spoke, coming up behind us and offering a kind smile. She looked up at the two soldiers. Sorry for barging in like this, but you have a visitor, Crystal. May spoke. I furrowed my brows. A visitor. Someone who very much wanted to meet you. May spoke as if that explained everything. Without another word, she walked into the house. I gave Aunt Sarah a confused look and glanced at the 𝐾𝐤 Park soldiers before following May inside. She walked into the kitchen. Kat rushed up to me from where she had been seated in the living room with Hazel. Dude, you'll never believe who's here. She whispered quickly. She seemed too giddy. Crystal Swan. I spun around at the unfamiliar voice only to see a face that I did in fact recognize. Jasmine Stone. Daughter of the Alpha of the 𝐾𝐤 pack. And she knew my name. Tristan came up behind her. And my mind was instantly taken back to the night of the AP ball last year when she came as Tristan's date. I hadn't even spoken to her then. Just stared and envied from afar. Crystal, this is Jasmine, I know who she is. I spoke, cutting him off. The real question was, why was she here? Tristan looked somewhat shocked. Okay. Jazz wanted to meet you. Jazz. The beautiful dark-haired lady smiled at me. I'm in town for the full moon festival tomorrow. She explained. And of course the union meetings. Union meetings. I asked in confusion. The alphas of the Werewolf Union are convening here for an emergency meeting, Tristan explained. Jazz turned to look at Tristan with a frown. I thought you would have told her. Tristan didn't meet my eyes. I already explained the situation to you, Jazz. Jasmine turned to look at me. She was so pretty. Oh right. That. Well, I'd like to say I've heard a lot, Crystal, but in all honesty, I don't think I've heard as much as I would have liked. She smiled as if it was meant to be a joke. What did she want to hear? Why was Jasmine Stone even interested in me? What was this about? I looked at Tristan, hoping for answers, but if he had them, he didn't show. She suddenly looked behind me. Hi, she outstretched her hand to Aunt Sarah. I'm Jasmine, you must be Kat and Hazel's mom. Yes, I am, and it's so lovely to meet you, Jasmine. I've heard so much. Aunt Sarah spoke. I looked at her in confusion. She had. Okay. Tristan spoke. Now that you've all met, we can leave. He told Jasmine, giving her a pointed look. I frowned. So this is what it had come to. Him just popping in and out. We couldn't even be in the same room anymore. Not yet. Jasmine spoke. She turned her attention on me. I would like to talk to Crystal. Tristan looked uncomfortable. Well, she's right here. Alone. Jasmine spoke, giving me a smile. Okay, what had I done now? 𝐊𝐲𝐬, it's so nice out here. Jasmine spoke as she walked ahead of me out into the clearing of the backyard. I simply watched her. This gorgeous lady who was basically royalty considering she was an alpha's daughter. I didn't know her and she didn't know me. So her asking for a private audience was confusing to say the least. She turned around, her long dark hair fling in the wind and her forest green eyes settling on me. You know, I once backpacked through Europe and met this pack that we preferred not to live in houses. They were all about living in nature and letting their wolf sides dominate. I lived among them for a couple of months and it was so liberating. She shut her eyes, sucked in a deep breath and let out a satisfied sigh. When I went back home, I was so restless for so long. I had gotten used to being in the wild and living on instinct alone. I was starting to wonder where she was going with this, but I didn't want to be rude by telling her to get to the point. We live in such close proximity to humans that we often forget to let our wolves have their moment in the sun once in a while. She muttered, and I wondered if she was still talking to me or to herself. After being quiet for what felt like minutes, she opened her eyes again. I can't imagine what it was like for you suppressing your true nature and living among humans for so long. I was caught off guard but also relieved. Something directed at me. It wasn't so bad actually. I had friends and my family. My dad at least. He was human and normal. Jasmine frowned slightly. I'm sorry that your whole world had to come crushing down in more ways than one. I suddenly wondered how much Tristan had told this stranger about me. I felt weird. My life story with all its twists and turns and tragedies was still my life. I had the right to disclose who got to know my secrets. How much do you know? I asked warily. Oh, sorry. She spoke, seeming genuinely apologetic. I know what it's like to have your life studied and lived under a microscope. Trust me, my dad has been having me supervised and watched since I was born. You still haven't answered my question. I spoke. Jasmine gave me a half-hearted smile. About everything, I suppose. Again, I'm sorry, but there's a file on you and it's in my job description to snoop. Came out before I could even control myself. The same way I had gotten mad about Joshua reading my file is the same way I was mad at this person I didn't even know knowing so many personal details. Jasmine let out a small breath. I guess Tristan really didn't tell you much about me. I'm an Interpack ambassador. I'm in a department of ambassadors under the Union who deal with issues that affect the packs under the Union. And you, Crystal Swan, are a hot topic for us right now. I looked at Jasmine. She didn't look any older than Tristan. I didn't know if I believed that she had such an important sounding job. As if she sensed my skepticism, she reached into her jacket pocket and took out a card. It was actually an ID. It has the Werewolf Union logo and her picture and details. Promise I'd check out. Ask anyone. I handed her back the ID. So what are you here to do? Interrogate me? I asked dryly. God knows I had had enough of that. No. But I do want to talk. I do want to get to know Tristan's mate. If anything, we should have met ages ago if Tristan hadn't been so quiet about you. I flinched at the word. We're not mates anymore. I explained. I felt a tingling feeling in my chest. As if the after effects of the rejection were coming to haunt me. I know that too. Jasmine spoke. If she knew it, then why did she bring it up? Tristan explained the entire fiasco. He seemed to tell you a lot. Okay, this time I had meant to be snarky. Jasmine simply shrugged, seemingly unbothered by my tone. Comes with the territory. We've only known each other our whole lives after all. We even stayed at the same base camp once when the war got particularly heavy. Being a kid and seeing your parents go to fight, and not knowing if they'll come back created some deep bonds that could not be broken if we tried. She spoke casually. I eyed her. You've known each other your whole lives. Jasmine nodded. Him, Peter, Lydia, Bridget, and I. We were the unbreakable quartet. Who's Lydia? I asked, knowing I had never heard the name. Jasmine's smile grew smaller. Well, almost unbreakable. Tristan didn't tell you about Lydia. She seemed to be under the impression that Tristan had a lot of personal conversations. If they were such good friends, she should have known that our relationship wasn't like that. I shook my head. 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐸. Well, I can't blame him. It's difficult for any of us to talk about her. Lydia Reese was the firstborn daughter of Javi Reese, alpha of the Reese pack before his brother Carlos Reese took over. And she was the bravest person I had ever met. She's not with us anymore, I guess. Jasmine's frown deepened. She was only 15 when she enlisted for the army. Like Tristan, she wanted to fight for her people, and she had already lost her father by then, which made her alpha. She died a hero. I wanted to hug Jasmine right then. If I knew her better, I might have. Yet another person Tristan had lost because of Ornyx. Yet another young person they had all lost. You would have liked her. Jasmine spoke, forcing a laugh. I assume you met Bridget. Well, picture someone 10 times more intense than Bridget with wild red hair. And you would have Lydia. She was something. Half the boys our age were either scared or utterly in love with her. Even Tristan had a little crush, which was brave of him considering he was 2 years younger than her. I always thought that if those two didn't find their mates, they would get married and unite their packs. Jasmine's smile faded. But we don't always get what we want, I suppose. Lydia's gone, Bridge. We don't even know if she'll make it, and now it's just the 3 of us. I'm sorry about that. I told her. Especially since I still blamed myself for Bridget. Jasmine furrowed her brows. Don't be. You being here. It's a good thing. Call me a hopeless romantic, but my wish for all my friends has always been that they would find their mates. After all they've been through. They deserve that. Tristan isn't my mate. I spoke, desperate to make it clear. Not anymore. He couldn't even bear to be in the same room as me. Jasmine didn't respond immediately. Do you want to be with him? I didn't expect that question. I don't think I had ever gotten that question. It doesn't really matter. Jasmine pursed her lips. Tristan told me about your tumultuous relationship. That was one way to put it. Then he told you that he rejected me. I spoke, folding my arms across my chest. I was so ready for this conversation to be over. Yeah, but you rejected him first, to be fair. I couldn't say anything to defend myself. What would I say? His hurt more. I didn't know that. Bridget had told me that day at HQ that I never truly understood the feeling of rejection, and now I did. It hurt like hell, and it especially ached when he was around. Magnets meant to attract, now bound to repel. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. She added. The mating bond usually isn't too complicated. I've heard of mates who don't even have a sexual attraction. Their relationship is purely platonic, and they even see other people. For years people have confused the mating bond for that because that's what it usually equates to. But really, the mating bond helps you find love, in the purest form. Someone you can't live without. That's why I wanted to talk to you. I know that your relationship with Tristan isn't the best right now. Did he tell you that? I asked. Did he tell everyone about how I had messed up his life? And his pack? It wouldn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that you two can barely look at each other. Jasmine spoke. No one expects you guys to get together and get married. But I think you should at least consider fixing this relationship, so that you don't have to live in pain for the rest of your lives. Neither of you deserve that. I didn't know this Jasmine, but she seemed sincere. Or at least I don't think she had any ulterior motives. Turns out I wasn't so good at telling when people were lying to me. I've hurt him. I told her. 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐸. He doesn't see it that way. He thinks he ruined your life. I scoffed. Right. Wow, you two really have communication issues. Jasmine might have been Tristan's bestie, or whatever, but she didn't know or understand anything that had happened here in the past weeks. What do you want, Crystal? What? I asked. She took a step closer to me. Tonight we celebrate the full moon festival. A celebration so sacred that even Ornyx himself wouldn't dare to disrespect it. It's the 6th full moon in the year. Halfway through, and we choose to commemorate it by being our true selves. I knew about the festival. I had never been to one because I could never be my true self as long as I lived in Woodfell. That's why I found my answer easier than I thought. What I want is to leave Woodfell. Jasmine's face showed that she clearly wasn't expecting that answer. And Tristan? She asked. I didn't know what to say. It's not like he wanted me here anyway. Did he tell you his plan? That he plans on challenging Ornyx? Yeah, he did. And you're okay with it? Jasmine looked surprised and somewhat disgusted. Of course not. But there's nothing I can do. Especially not here. I'm practically in hiding. There's always something you can do. She spoke. I just need you to be willing. I furrowed my brows, not understanding what she was asking of me. Tristan can't go after Ornyx. You and I can both agree to that. I think I know a way in which I can stop it. But I need you. So tell me, Crystal, are you willing to help?